invited me out to film the protest says, I'm sleeping in the bed with you.
It doesn't really matter what the majority group is. What matters is who has the loudest voice and what are the reactions to those loudest voices. For instance, right now, I would argue it's probably still the case that the majority of real trans people in the United States are pretty reasonable, pretty chill people. But when you have these huge vocal minorities that are so loud, and it doesn't seem like anybody on the left is willing to disavow what they say. On the contrary, a lot of progressive ideas are very good and need to be talked about more. Things like racial equity, things like systemic injustices, things like funding for education and healthcare, things related to trans or LGBT issues. But it gets lost in the sauce of like insane people doing these insane things that everybody on the left turns a blind eye towards.
I wanted to do this with you today when discussing it. I'm praying that you can forgive me for even contemplating the idea. Let me know when you're free to talk with me and the lads.
What a cuck. What a pushover.
I've never done a video like this before. I've written it 100 plus times, recorded it with a teleprompter, edited it a dozen times, had friends watch it, contacted lawyers, say the things I'm saying, but I could just never hit publish. It never felt right. I also can't go on doing the content I'm doing, talking about politics, talking about life as if it's all just normal, without saying these things, without having an honest, candid conversation about the truth. The truth about why I left, the truth about everything around me that so many people and influencers don't want you knowing, because it makes us look bad.
Wow, dramatic.
Where did it all begin? I was born to a family, and I had a wonderful, wonderful mother and father. We weren't particularly wealthy. I remember my first crib, I've seen a video of it, was a bathtub in my parents' one-bedroom apartment, and there's this cute video of my dad walking into the room and saying, "Hi, Lauren," as I'm sitting there in blankets in the tub.
The eyes of a future terrorist. Look into them. Recognize them in your own children, guys.
Of my dad walking into the room and saying, "Hi, Lauren," as I'm sitting there in blankets in the tub. Thank God a pipe didn't burst, or I wouldn't be here. But growing up in that household, I never knew anyone who was involved in any big-time politics or TV or anything like that. That was like absurd. The idea that I would ever be talking to hundreds of thousands of people, the idea that I'd ever be meeting politicians, like completely out of the picture for what my life should have looked like. You know, a very solid working class family. But my dad liked listening to political podcasts every day when I went to school. He'd put Dennis Prager on and Michael Savage, and I kind of found it all very interesting. I really enjoyed it and got into it a bit myself as well on the internet, on Tumblr, all of that. And eventually when I got to university, I decided I wanted to try doing politics as well. And I was the first one in my family to go to university. So that was really, really exciting for me. I was working like 3 jobs, minimum wage. It was $8 an hour then. I still can't believe it.
First 2 times,
And I'll never forget, I was 19, driving back and forth to university, and my car tank was empty. And I found $2 under the mat in my car, and I was so excited because I was like, I don't have any money in my bank account. It's totally empty, but this $2 might be able to get me home today so I can wait for my paycheck tomorrow and get to university the next day. I was so stressed financially at that time. And oil and gas policy really pissed me off because we had just brought in all of these policies in Canada, you know, raising the carbon tax that increased prices of oil and gas, and it actually really affected me on a serious level of, am I going to be able to go to university or not? Am I going to be able to get to work? So conservative policies on oil and gas were something that I was really interested, anything that made it easier for the working class, the regular person, day to day. So I joined this conference in university called Conserving Oil and Gas in Toronto. And my boyfriend at the time, who was this lovely Mennonite guy, decided to come with me. We flew to Toronto. It was one of maybe the second or third flight I'd been on in my life, and I was so excited to go to the big city. I got there, and it was being hosted by a man named Ezra Levant.
Ezra Levant. He's a source of debate, a source of controversy, a source of entertaining television. Introducing Ezra Levant only on Sun News Network.
Ezra Levant, yeah. Man, I remember watching him on TV when I was in high school. I would have been like 14, watching him on Sun News. And it's just this insanely confident, always worked up guy about free speech and Trudeau, the left-wingers and government. I loved watching it with my dad. It was very fun. And to see Ezra Levant in person, I was full-on fangirling. It was embarrassing. I had read all of his books. I brought Groundswell with me, I think, to try and get it signed by him. And not only did he come and sign it, he sat beside me at this dinner at the conference and talked to me for like half an hour. And I went home just elated, so excited by the whole experience. But, you know, went back to my little life. And that was that crazy political experience I had. And I decided, okay, you know, university is getting difficult to pay for. I'm falling behind in my classes because I'm working so many jobs on the side. I have to kind of find a solution to this, so I decided I was going to join the Army. I filled out all the paperwork. I heard they had a program where they would pay for your university or for you to complete your university if you gave them a certain number of years, and that was going to be, you know, the best career option I could possibly have for my future. And then I got this email out of nowhere from Ezra, and it said, Lauren, I'm starting a new media company called Rebel Media, and we would love for you to contribute to it.
Sun News Network is off the air.
Bang, gone. That's basically what happened.
Sun News Network went off the air today.
Sun News Network has gone dark.
The end of Sun News Network.
Sun TV faded to dark.
With Sun gone, there's a hole on the far right side of the dial.
Ezra Levant fighting for freedom in Calgary. Good night.
Every day, the consensus media had one goal: stop Harper.
That's Ezra Levant, a journalist many consider to be the solo remaining voice of the conservative right in Canada, reporting live on election night here at his website, therebel.media's brand new Toronto studio, for the very first time.
As you can see, it's just a box with a bunch of green screens and green blankets.
I was shocked that he wanted me, of all people, the girl who came to get my book signed by him and was just starstruck, drooling, to make a video for Rebel Media, his new outlet to support working class, good conservative Canadians like me and my family. I was elated by the idea and said, absolutely. I didn't think much would come of it. I looked at their channel and it had a few hundred views here and there, and I figured I'm in political science, so it'll be a good opportunity to help my speaking skills, my presentation, to have this connection. But I really cared. I really wanted it to look good and to impress, you know, Ezra and all the people working at Rebel. So I wrote a script. I called it Why I'm Not a Feminist. And it was the first video I made for Rebel. I probably filmed it 13, 14 times, eventually paid a friend to come help me do it because I wanted to get it just right. And sent it over to Rebel. Didn't expect much of it. Figured it would get a few hundred views. Went to bed. Woke up the next day, and my life had changed overnight. It had not hundreds of views, not thousands of views, millions of views. Millions. My friends were calling me. My friends at university were coming up to me saying, I've seen the video, Lauren. Oh my gosh. I had thousands of messages in all of my inboxes on Facebook, Twitter, and in the span of 24 hours, I went from that fangirl wanting to get her book signed by Ezra Levant and going back to my little life working a minimum wage job to being at the center of everything I was watching, commentating on, and being fascinated by from afar. Just like that. It's hard to like bring back the memories at this point. It was, I feel like, such a hectic time in my life. There were so many changes, so many eyes on me, so many opportunities that I never thought I would ever get in my life. And I was desperate to make it work. Because like I said, I wasn't set up to be a doctor or a lawyer or something with some massive fund ready for university. This was like, if I got this opportunity and I made it work, that would change my life forever.
What a gorgeous day in Vancouver, and joining us to talk about herself is Lauren Southern. Great to see you in person.
Great to see you, Ezra.
Lauren, you are the #1 star of the Rebel.media. Your commentary on feminism, well, it got almost 600,000 views on our site, and it was pirated by others.
Rebel offered me to have a show at that point. They said I could go out and do recordings at protests and come out to Toronto once a month to do a show, Standoff with Lauren Southern. We're in serious trouble if we don't get an entirely new government. If you don't protect everyone's free speech, you're going to find your own silenced at some point.
Okay, not to shit on Lauren, but does it seem strange that if you were a media company, you're like, we're going to grab this 19-year-old girl and she's going to be like a big... Doesn't that seem kind of strange? Maybe, maybe not.
Oh, they paid for the flights. Sorry. They paid for the flights, but they didn't pay for anything else. So I'd use a couch surfing app, and I'd stay at random people's houses, sleeping on their floors to go and do this show in Toronto. It was insane. The fact that I'm not murdered, or it is incredible. Incredible that I didn't get killed. Yeah, it really frustrates me now whenever I see people be like, oh, Lauren only got all these views and everything because she's a cute blonde girl or whatever. Like, no, I sacrificed a lot. I made a lot of efforts to make this work.
Why?
Because I cared. I deeply, deeply cared. I am almost embarrassed sometimes looking back at it, but because so many people that I worked with in politics didn't actually believe in any of the politics that they spoke about. It was kind of an aesthetic. A lot of people who didn't make it in acting kind of got into politics and learned the talking points they had to say. And I was fully bought in from the start. I believed this was a civilizational battle for the heart of the West, for goodness, righteousness, conservatism, family, Christianity. That was all something that I truly, truly believed in at the core of my heart and soul, to the point where at that time I was getting kicked out of university classes for speaking up. I was, threatening my work. I almost lost my job, having to take so many days off to go and do these videos for Rebel. And I didn't make any money, not a dime. Not a dime off any of it.
Just to clarify, so people don't think I'm lying about this, after my first video went viral, Rebel did offer to pay me a stipend of $100 per video.
This kind of shit reminds me in the early days of like esports and shit, when none of us had any idea like what any of our shit was worth. You'll get these companies that will pay you like, oh my god, like $50 or $100 for videos that will be getting 6-figure, sometimes 7-figure views. This is probably true of every like fledgling internet industry. You never really know how much you're worth until you're getting fucked for a long time. Yeah, there was the machinima days where they would like contract kids into infinity and stuff, and they'd like rip them off with how much they'd be willing to pay them and stuff. I totally believe this. They'd offer like $100. I'm pretty sure some of these early videos too got like didn't that feminism get like over 1 million views or something? Fuck, I'm not gonna be able to find it now. There's one she did where she walks around with that stupid fucking sign. Oh no, it was was it like the rape culture isn't real? Do these videos even exist anymore? Do they get deleted? It's Rebel News. I feel like she had a couple that were like over 1 million views, and the idea that you get paid like $100 for, I feel like good faith would be to at least like reach out and offer more money to the people for, like, hey, this video did way better than we thought it would. Like, maybe we could like, bump your pay up to like $1,000 or even at least like a few $100s more as like a show of good faith. But I don't know.
But the problem was...
Wait, slut walk video.
So is it any...
Good job.
everyone. Okay, so
This is in 2017. I don't know if this isn't what I'm thinking of. There are older ones, but why I am not a feminist. Oh, it might have been this one. 1.25 million views. Damn.
They were paying for fully produced and edited products, so I had to hire an editor who I was paying a minimum of $120 to $200 per video for. It got to the point where I was struggle busing it so bad with $0 in the bank, I would have to make him wait until I got my paycheck from my university job, Cascades Casino or EB Games, before I could pay him. So all
Imagine walking in EB Games, Lauren Southern. That sounds great.
All of those videos I did, where I got millions of views that would have gotten thousands of dollars in ad revenue, I lost money making them. Eventually, after some months of working, Rebel did give me a full-time job there and would cover hotels, etc. So I saw this all as worth it, but I had to fight for it for sure.
When did it become popular for girls to do that thing? Where the fuck did this come from? And when did it start? You guys know what I'm talking about? They do it in pictures too. I have no idea.
I maybe had flights covered sometimes, but I paid for all of those videos I made at the very beginning with like the $0 that I had.
Asia, anime.
No one was talking about this stuff at the time. There weren't, I mean, YouTube had been around for a while, but most videos on YouTube were Fred, Smosh, people making funny, silly little skits, and then the news was just the news. It was, okay, there's been a traffic jam here, and this bill has been signed, or whatever. There wasn't this massive sphere of political creators and streamers and all these little media companies that had become, you know, online entities, and they weren't talking about these controversial hot-button issues like feminism going wild in universities at the time, men being told they were evil, being told that you're a horrific, awful person for being white. What really triggered a lot of this for me was taking the first social justice class that was introduced to my high school curriculum in Canada in grade 12, and they split us at the lockers based on how you were, if you were privileged or oppressed. And I was put on the privileged side just because I was white. And I remember looking at people across on the other side of the lockers that I knew had extremely wealthy, privileged backgrounds that had been put on the oppressed side and thinking, this is madness. This is insanity. What world are we living in? And why is no one talking about this? And so obviously, I'm like, yeah, I want to make these videos for Rebel. Yeah, we need to be talking about this. And man, I was so passionate about it all. And I just didn't realize at the time that, I don't know, that passion I had as kind of the little guy coming into that big world wasn't as organic for a lot of the players that already existed in the world of politics. Joke's on me, I entered politics and didn't realize it was full of liars and frauds. Wow, surprise, surprise. But, okay, so anyways, I could get into all of that for a while, but obviously, one thing I wondered when I first started making these videos for Rebel was, am I just a one-trick pony? Is this just gonna be why I'm not a feminist, millions and millions of views, and then no one cares about anything else? But that didn't end up being the case. In fact, I started going to protests like an absolute crazy person and counter-protesting these feminists and asking them questions about their ideology and philosophy, and those videos went absolutely viral as well. Lauren Southern crashes Vancouver slut walk. Lauren Southern crashes Alberta slut walk. Whatever they were, people loved these on-the-street questioning protesters' videos.
No means no! No means no! No means no!
You are attacking our cameraman. The whole point of the walk is to protest rape culture.
I think that video went so viral at the time because not a lot of politics was being done that way. Today, you have 1,000 different people on the streets going to protests with live streams. It's like extremely common to the point where it's like saturated to go to protests. But at that time, no one had really seen it before. Commentators, political pundits, your place was behind a desk. You told people your opinions after the event happened. You didn't go to the event and then opine or cause commotion at said event, especially on YouTube. It just didn't really exist that much at the time. I don't want to say I'm the first, because that's conceited, and I'm probably not, but one of the first people on YouTube doing that, for sure, which was, yeah, just a wild experience. Of course, when I figured that was the kind of commentary people liked, and that was the critique of feminism that was working, that was getting people talking about, wow, these feminists don't really have their ideas all together. There's some serious contradictions going here, some serious flaws, right? I decided to keep hammering that hard. And one opportunity I got was to go down to Los Angeles to the Amber Rose Slut Walk. And not only the Amber Rose Slut Walk, but to meet another hero of mine, Milo Yiannopoulos. I could not say no to an opportunity to meet Milo Yiannopoulos, to work on a project with him, and to go to another one of these slut walks where we could criticize this massive feminist enterprise that was ruining the lives of so many good people I knew. And this is a good segue for getting into the story of the Amber Rose Slut Walk. But one of the big reasons I didn't like feminism was because I had so many good men in my life. My father is an incredible man. Love him to death. Such a good dad. The men around me at my church, the men who were my friends in high school and elementary school, even the men that I dated at the time. Like, wonderful, wonderful people, truly. And to see them being portrayed as evil rapists and misogynists and bad for women, it really angered me.
Most men are rapists. By that I mean most cis heteronormative men.
The only answer to that is to kill male babies and just kill any man that you see, like in the streets, like any sweet just kill him.
It really, really, truly upset me at the time.
It's a little unhinged.
And I didn't really understand this visceral hatred and distrust towards the world and men that feminists had at all. It wasn't my lived experience, which brings me into how I got to the Amber Rose Slut Walk. So, of course, flying to LA, couldn't afford that. Staying at a hotel, could not afford that. I've explained this already. And I was lucky enough that an individual who was involved in the anti-feminist sphere had sent me an email. I think it was even under a fake name like John Doe or something, and this is how trusting I was. He just offered, Lauren, if you're willing to come down here, I'll pay for your flight. I'll pay for a place for you to stay. You'll be all good and sorted, right? And all I want basically is for you to make this content criticizing these crazy feminists. This cultural issue is so important for me that I'm willing to fund your trip. Amazing opportunity. I think I even messaged him back and I was like, thank you so much. Yeah, we can hang out, play some video games, have a glass of wine, and go to the protest the next day. Of course, my 19-year-old brain had no conception whatsoever, no idea of red flags that I'm gonna go meet a strange guy in a different city and go stay at a hotel that he sets me up at. Like, just, the red flags would be obvious. Now I look back and I'm like, you dumb bitch. But then it seemed all perfectly fine to me. I land in LA, meet this guy, takes me to my Airbnb, and it's barely an Airbnb. It's like actually just like some Harry Potter-ass closet that someone has made in their apartment with like a draw curtain in the side of the wall, a cubby, if you will. And I go to bed because I arrived super late in Los Angeles. It's like 10 p.m. there or something. And this guy that's invited me out to film the protest says, I'm sleeping in the bed with you. I just did not even compute. I didn't understand. I was like, oh, no, I'd like to sleep in the bed myself. And he said, no, I paid for this bed. I will be sleeping in the bed with you.
This guy must have been watching the Destiny rape guides, because that's how you do it.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I was so panicked, so shocked by this situation. I didn't really know how to respond. I think I made something up about how, oh, maybe tomorrow or something. I just really need to get sleep tonight. I'm not feeling well. Please leave, please leave. And I finally got him to leave the Airbnb, but I was absolutely terrified. Terrified that someone would, obviously now, you know, looking back, I can see why someone would think that, but me, 19-year-old me, like when I was younger, I was like, why would someone fly me out here to do something political with the expectation that I was going to sleep with them? That's like crazy to me. They didn't say anything about that. I didn't say anything about that. Why would they put me in that situation? If I could go back in time and slap myself and tell myself to be a less trusting individual, I would. I would, because I put myself in a lot of really unfortunate situations. I would. I would slap myself and tell myself to be a less trusting individual. I would. I would, because I put myself in a lot of really unfortunate situations politically because of this naive trust I had. Sadly enough, probably some of these feminists that still, I think, have insane ideas in a lot of ways, but some of them probably would have given me the same warning. Just they took that lived experience to such an extreme that they made it impossible to communicate to anyone else who hadn't lived it. And it makes me angry looking back at some of the radical feminists that I confronted when I think, if you guys had just been more reasonable with how you presented things, if you hadn't made it all men, if you hadn't sat around and demonized an entire sex and told me they were all rapists and been hysterical with how you presented your ideas, then maybe me and other women would have actually listened to the real criticisms of the world and gender dynamics that you had, some of the important lessons you had. It makes me really mad, because there are things that feminists say that are true. There are power dynamics that exist. There are situations that women can get themselves in where they'll be in danger. And all of those warnings fall on deaf ears when you put them in the context of...
Fuck, I don't know how much I want to push back on chat on this, because I know that anything I say will be perceived as being simp-filled, but this is 1,000,000,000% correct. If you're out there screeching insane shit like kill all men, which you can pretend it's not socially acceptable to say it, but it is, and it was for a long period of time to say shit like that, or things like, you know, all white people are racist, blah, 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 you can't really be surprised when people don't listen to anything you say. I would argue, actually, I said this back in 2013, when it came to the word one of the reasons why it took me so long to move off of that word was because most of the people that would screech at me that I shouldn't say that because it's homophobic, most of them would say that, like, you're only saying this because you hate gay people. Like, every time you say this, it reveals how homophobic and hateful of gay people you are. It's like, I don't hate gay people. Why would I even listen to anything you have to say? Who said that? Never mind. I'm not taking the bait. Were those people a majority of the feminist movement? So I think this is an issue that you have to contend with, and it's not fair, but it doesn't matter. This is what you have to deal with when you need to be politically effective, because you see the same thing happen with the trans movement today. You're seeing it happen more and more. It doesn't really matter what the majority group is. What matters is who has the loudest voice and what are the reactions to those loudest voices. That's the issue that you're having. Because, for instance, right now, I would argue it's probably still the case that the majority of real trans people in the United States are pretty reasonable, pretty chill people. But when you have these huge vocal minorities that are so fucking loud, and it doesn't seem like anybody on the left is willing to disavow what they say. On the contrary, they'll follow them lockstep and enforce all the crazy shit coming from them. Well, I mean, you can't really at the end of the day go, well, hold on, that's just a vocal minority. Okay, well, no one's calling anybody out, right? If you were in a group with 10 people and 2 guys started to rape a woman and the other 8 people stood by and watched, and people were like, what the fuck? What are you guys doing? And it's like, well, it was only a minority of us raping anybody. Like, I mean, you can't really hold us accountable for that. It was just 2 guys. What the fuck? The other 8 of us were just like standing there. Like, well, yeah, what the fuck do you think? This is a revelation I came to a while ago about the libs of TikTok shit, where I try to wonder, like, why do people let a minority voice control the narrative? How does this happen? And it's not the minority voice that's controlling the discourse. It's the majority that doesn't respond to the minority that is pulling people in the other direction. For instance, when it comes to like the 4-year-old trans kids people, everybody is very quick to say, and I've been involved in personal drama, not personal, I've been involved in fights on my own where this happens. People will say things like, okay, it's the minority of people saying that like 4-year-olds can be trans, Destiny, so that's not fair to point out. But the problem isn't the minority of people that are saying it, it's the majority of people that are defending it. Because when it comes to some of this stuff, if like 95% of people on the left, when somebody comes out like, oh, my 4-year-old is trans, and if all progressive people on the left are like, yeah, that woman's kind of weird, that's a little bit crazy, that's probably not like the best thing to say, then I don't think conservatives have anywhere near as much ammo Except for that's not the response from the left. The response is to defend them viciously to the death. And then when you accuse them at the end of being like insane, you go, well, it's just a minority of people doing it. The problem isn't the minority of people doing it. It's the majority of people defending it and running defense for it. That's the issue, you know? I think the other side will also latch on to crazy things, amplify it, and that causes shit to be even more prominent. I don't think that's necessarily true. I've used that excuse for myself in the past, but I don't think it's true. Like, and it's hard for me, because I'm only human, but it's hard for me to keep track of this. People will say things like, Destiny, you can't do this particular type of behavior. And sometimes in anger, in the past, I've responded to this by saying, no matter what I say or do, people are going to take me out of context. People are going to say these crazy things about me anyway. Literally, no matter what. People are going to take whatever I say to context. People do whatever. To some extent, that's true. That is true to some extent. August helped me see this too. That is true to some extent. No matter what I do, there's always going to be some group of people that are going to take me out of context. But you don't do yourself any favors by acting in an unhinged manner like other people say you will. Or if you act in the ways that people say you do, you're gonna lose a lot of people that you wouldn't notice otherwise, right? Like maybe there are 10 people that take me out of context. I'm like, well, what the fuck was the point? I should have just acted unhinged. Well, then you act unhinged and now 100 people take you out of context. It's like, okay, well, see, they did it the same anyway. But there is a difference, you know? Destiny, I disagree. People are running defense for the insane minority. It's more of a turning a blind eye to that group. It's the same thing, though. If you turn a blind eye to that group, people are going to assume that you support it. That's always going to be the case. There is a lot to be said for progressive messaging. I would still, I don't know why, but I would still consider myself a pretty hardcore progressive. I think that a lot of progressive messaging is, not messaging, ideas are very good and need to be talked about more. Things like racial equity, things like systemic injustices, things like funding for education and healthcare, things related to trans or LGBT issues. I think there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be talked about, but it gets lost in the sauce of like insane people doing these insane things that everybody on the left turns a blind eye towards. And I'm worried because we're seeing like over and over and over again, like, I think at the university levels, it's like gotten to be, it's like almost too much. It's almost, or maybe it's past being too much to where like that battle is actually lost at this point. I remember that Thomas guy, it was interesting. The guy that debated, the guy that debated Vosh that came out of my stream that I argued with, that guy was saying one of the things that's scary at the university level is that as people keep retiring out and new people are brought in, a lot of the culture is hardcore shifting because of the newer people brought in. As the newer people keep getting brought in, the culture moves more and more, and it becomes an unwinnable battle at some point. And that article that we read yesterday about the guy that was retiring because the fellow anthropology dude got basically destroyed in the university also echoed a similar thing, that as new people are brought in, as people look to like bring in more ideologically compliant people, that you're going to see the culture shift more and more. And the progressive ideology is unbelievably intolerant, which normally is kind of whatever, but when you're intolerant and you have a lot of institutional power, that's really scary. Conservatives are really intolerant, but in terms of like culture, I don't care about conservative intolerance. Like you guys, you don't have the levers of any of culture anymore, so it doesn't matter. But when progressives are intolerant, they have the ability to destroy tons of lives and get official backing doing it, which is really scary. One of the trans emails said something similar. Once the original LGBTQA leader of their conservative school left, the new people took over and ruined it. Yeah. People keep talking about this pendulum swinging back, and I've said that. I don't actually think the pendulum will swing back. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that what's going to continue to happen is instead of a pendulum swinging back, there's going to be more schisming. I think that's what's going to happen. I think that people are going to keep breaking off more and more and more and more and more and more and more, and then they're going to like get into their own. Right-wingers have a lot of power culturally. Sorry to say this. Right-wingers have no more cultural power anymore. I think right-wingers have lost cultural power at almost in every... I'm trying to think of a single medium. Maybe on talk radio. Maybe right-wingers still have some cultural power. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, they have nothing. They absolutely do. Where? In what domains? Where is the cultural power of conservatives at? Dude, in the state you live in? I bet every university here is probably crazy left wing. Are you just talking legislatively? Legislatively, conservatives still have some power, obviously. They probably will come next election cycle, but that's different than culturally. When I say cultural, I'm talking like entertainment, music, I guess like just like stuff that you see in any of the areas that you engage in like an entertainment way, I guess. So like music, movies, TV shows, social media on the internet, art. They pass legislation enforcing their cultural values, LeMay, when they work. They absolutely don't work, dude. You look at how much the president was crying about like amending Section 230 to try to get like more shit on Facebook changed so the conservatives would start getting banned everywhere. Hold on. I don't think this is a real argument. You're dead wrong. Where do I see conservative movies are a joke. What, God's Not Dead 1, 2, and 3? There is no conservative art anywhere because conservatives just gave up on art for their own stupid fucking reasons. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that conservatives don't have any power legislatively. They do, absolutely, in some places. They might get it all back in government, too, and they have it in the Supreme Court. But culturally, conservatives have just given up on it for that whole other host of reasons. But people are going to keep saying this over and over again, like Terrible Tim, everything is internet destiny. I feel like you guys are going to be like 80 years old where you have to like log into your refrigerator just to open it. You'll be like, oh, I remember those kids keep saying everything is internet. Like, I'm sorry if like, I know some of you, it bothers you, but like it's all trending in one direction with like it getting more and more and more and more and more and more popular and ever present and omnipresent and pervasive in every aspect of your life. Like you can pretend like it's quote unquote just the internet, but then in the next breath, you'll echo things like the access to the internet should be a human right. That should be a human right guaranteed by the UN and the United States. Like it's, you can't keep turning a blind eye to it, or you can, and you can just lose everywhere too if that's what you want. But all right, sorry, back to this.
And all of those warnings fall on deaf ears when you put them in the context of.
The point is that the average person isn't out there in the Twitter trenches. I would say that at this point, it seems like in the universities, a lot of this stuff is becoming quite ubiquitous. That seems to be the case in universities. So and then in terms of, so here's two areas that I've seen it like outside of the internet. One are universities, and two is corporate culture. So if that's the case, if it's ubiquitous among corporate culture and university, I think I mentioned before, I had two people emailing me because I said a while ago that like I think the BIPOC stuff is going away. I don't think anybody uses BIPOC anymore. And I had two people emailing me that were saying like, hey, I know that you said this is the case, but in the corporate world, like everybody uses BIPOC. This is something that we talk about a lot at HR and all this shit or whatever. I don't know if that's true. It was only two people. Maybe it was only in their companies. When I mentioned this yesterday, everybody in chat, or some people in chat were saying like, oh yeah, we say that a lot too. So yeah, I don't think that I think it worked 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, but I don't think you can keep burying your head in the sand and screeching. It's just corporate, or it's just the internet. It's only Twitter. It's just the internet. Blah blah blah. Like we see this shit show up in real life, right? Were the Covington kids like? Was that just the internet, or any other number of like stupid like the BLM riots? That wasn't just the internet, right? Like the videos of like Chaz, was that just the internet? Didn't that end up with 2 people dead? I don't think you can just keep saying that these things are just the internet, but
ridiculous, exaggerated talking points of all men are evil, right?
CRT stuff, would you classify as culture? What about backlash to transgender stuff in southern states? Is none of this culture? The issues relating to statutes and textbooks? No, I would call that legislation. Conservatives can't push back anywhere culturally. When I don't think of legislation as culture, right? The conservatives have no representation in culture. They just don't. I'm sorry, they just don't. Now, and I'm not even blaming progressives for that. Conservatives have their whole host of like stupid fucking reasons for abandoning that shit, for abandoning everything. Because I was gonna say, I almost said yesterday that like conservatives decided to focus on STEM over like art, but that's not true either. Conservatives are just fucking dumb. They just have their whole, they like totally disengaged from everything in academia, and they don't have like science, engineering, or fucking, I don't know. Jesus, yeah, it's a huge split in the United States, but. Does having a hold on over 50% of your state do nothing for you culturally? I don't know how you can win elections there. Well, where is your like states don't produce like media generally. I mean, I guess you can argue there might be local culture in some areas, but okay.
Ridiculous, exaggerated talking points of all men are evil, right? So it makes me very sad looking back and wishing that I could have had reasonable conversations with these women. It was probably half my fault, half theirs, right? But so I was pretty shaken up the next morning after the whole guy who invited me confronting me and asking me to sleep in my bed. But I'd gotten an invite from Milo to go meet him and his assistant at a restaurant in LA, and there was no way I wasn't going to show up to that. So I put on the nicest dress I owned. I showed up to this restaurant, and it was the most opulent thing I had ever seen in my life at that point. I mean, the conservatives I hung out with at home, I met them at church, and I met them at farms. I went to university at a place called University of the Fraser Valley, which was out in Chilliwack and Abbotsford. If you're Canadian or from BC, you'll know what I'm talking about. My conservative mates were, you know, manure hauling, cow farming, chicken farming friends of mine that were riding around on tractors, not going to opulent restaurants in Los Angeles. So this was a whole new world to enter. I didn't even know there were conservatives that did this, that were cool, so to speak, right? And I guess Milo was kind of one of the first to start that culture of let's have conservatives that are into fashion, that are cool, that are gay, that are this, right? So that was a very surprising and somewhat galling, but obviously amazing experience for me. We talked for hours. We talked about Breitbart. Milo gave me so much advice on what to do and me.
Fuck, hold on. I want to go back and forth with the chat a lot because I don't want to do that again. Conservatives still have large camps in econ, business, and less so in STEM. I thought that, and I've said that a few times on stream, but every time I say that, I'll get somebody emailing me to push back against that, where they'll say like, hey, I know you have this impression that econ departments or finance departments or business departments are like super conservative, but that's not true. Most of them are like center-left Democrats, like center-left liberals. That's like the vast majority of those people. I don't know if that's true, but that's the pushback that I get when somebody emails me, because I had the impression, I know when I was going to school, when I was in college in 2008, you know, it was always the idea that like econ departments are like very conservative. They're the most conservative place in schools. Maybe that was true 15 years ago, but now everybody that emails me is like, most of these people are going to be like your coastal elite center-left liberals. Like, yeah, they might be a little bit conservative on like fiscal policy, but like socially, these people are all super left-leaning. You're not getting like or not super left-leaning, but like left-leaning. It would have been super left-leaning 10 years ago, but like left-leaning people that you're not going to find a bunch of people in college campuses and econ departments like dick riding Trump or something. Yeah, but maybe not. I don't know. That's just what I get emailed. I haven't been to school in a long time.
Breitbart. Milo gave me so much advice on what to do in media and politics, advice that I look back on now, and I don't know how good it was, but I was very overwhelmed by the whole experience. But I remember being quite thankful that Milo was sympathetic to my situation with the Airbnb guy and said, listen, come stay with us. Don't worry about it. Like, that's really crazy and creepy. We'll keep an eye out for you so that, you know, you don't have to worry about this creepy guy trying to take advantage of you. So the next day, this guy, I tell the guy I don't want to stay in his Airbnb anymore. Don't worry about it, bud. Like, just stay away from me. This is really creepy. He has an absolute freak out, like yelling at me. He starts going into his Skype messages. He starts going on his little like Twitter DMs with all of these different anti-feminist groups and basically saying I'm a fraud. I'm this horrible, horrible fraud that was actually just terrible in person, right? And this was the first time I had experienced something like this from someone that was supposed to be like my friend, my side of the aisle. I'm standing up for you, man. I'm criticizing feminism for people like you, and now you are acting the way that these feminists would portray a man. Why is this happening? And that was a really upsetting experience for me.
Wait, did she say who this was?
That passed. I kind of shook it off as a one-off. That's a one-off thing. This guy was a little crazy, but you know, 99.9% of men are good people who would never do something like that.
No.
Anyways, it's the next day. Milo, Alam, and I and a film team go to the Ambrose Slut Walk. It is a gorgeous, sunny day out, so you got girls everywhere wearing nothing, boobs out, tape on.
Based.
And Milo and I are ready for chaos. We've made these very offensive signs, horrendously offensive, that are like Harry Potter and rape culture. What do they have in common? Neither are real, you know? Just absolutely inflammatory stuff. And we show up at this event, And of course, after we've done a few interviews, bring out our signs, and these girls go wild. They are losing their minds. They're twerking on us. They're trying to steal our signs. They're trying to attack us. The police get called. We're getting dragged out by the police. And I remember just being so full of adrenaline. I think I even said to Milo, like, let's stay, let's get arrested, let's do it. And I think the only reason we didn't stay and get put in handcuffs was because Milo and I were both foreign citizens, and we would have been banned from traveling if we got arrested and got criminal records in the US. So we walked out, but we still got some amazing footage.
All right, so why are you guys out here today at the Slut Walk?
Beautiful ladies.
Of course, beautiful ladies.
Amber Rose. Amber.
Amber, so all of you just came out here to see all the chicks scantily clad?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a great cause. I'm all for it. I'm all for the sluts.
We went back to this apartment we were all staying and just quickly emailing off the footage, getting it all edited, prepared for release, just so excited by this. Look at these crazy feminists. They're attacking us. They can't even have a conversation. They're ripping up our signs. They're calling the police. That was the content that really shocked people at the time, right? Because that going on the ground and actually confronting another person about their ideas in this environment, it was very new. And we were just sitting there hanging out after, so excited about it all. I remember, yeah, we went to a bar or something after, and it was just Milo, Alum, and I. And I got along super well with Milo and Alum, particularly Alum. He was such a sweet guy. I remember I cannot stress enough what a dork I was before I got into this political world. I went to anime conventions, you know, video games, read tons of fantasy. I was into all that stuff. And Alum was a bit dorky too and liked politics. So we got along really well. He'd laugh at my jokes, talk about, you know, all these different animes that he had seen as well. And, you know, we stayed in contact for like weeks, months after that and got along really well. We had a fantastic friendship.
Cut for a second. Went on a long unnecessary rant here. Just gonna give you the TLDR. Alum and I went on a few dates in December of 2015. I ended things. Obviously, like any normal person, Alum was upset. And when venting to a mutual friend of ours, made a joke that he could leak a ton of my offensive messages to the press or public if he wanted to. I'm talking like old classic 2015 4chan memes. And when my friend told me this, he made it sound like the most serious, dire thing in the world. And I truly thought my reputation was about to be destroyed. My life destroyed, the political career I had barely even started yet. Joke's on me, I ended up making all of those offensive memes my political career anyways. But none of that ever happened. Alum never leaked anything on me. He actually ended up apologizing for the fact that we fell out, and I to him as well. And we're really, really good friends to this day. And to me, this really speaks to the all or nothing view of relationships that my generation has been sold by overzealous feminists on the one hand and right-wingers on the other. We're told we have to see entire sexes as either completely villainous or completely pure, and to interpret bad moments in our relationships as moral outrages, the end of the world, injustices that must be answered. At the same time, there's the ever-present fear of being quote-unquote canceled online for whatever reason, of having the worst sides of ourselves, or even just embarrassing sides, being dragged into the public eye. It creates this fear in relationships that wasn't really there in the pre-digital era, before it became just a trivial thing to broadcast to a global audience. In reality, relationships are messy. Bad breakups happen. People who really liked each other end up not liking each other for a while, and then time goes by and you're friends. That's exactly what happened with Alum. We're really good friends now. He's honestly one of the few people in politics that I would point to as an example of, man, that person stuck to their morals. They're a stand-up guy. If you watch the televised breakups of celebrities, you may be convinced that bad breakups and angry words mean you have to be enemies for life. It really doesn't have to be that way. But at the time, I'm sure both Alum and I felt that way. And so I turned to Milo out of genuine fear.
And Milo was really, really comforting, spoke to Alum, got him to come back to London. He's like, don't worry, Lauren, I've calmed him down. It's all okay. Close that chapter, or so I thought. Okay, So from this point, months go by, and Milo's career is just skyrocketing. He's uncontactable, haven't heard from him in ages. He's on every TV screen. He's going on Bill Maher, speaking at every campus in America, protests every day, just insane. I'm at home, just picking up groceries, and out of nowhere, I get a call from him. I remember being in a parking lot in Walnut Grove and just seeing Milo calling my phone. I pick up, and the man is just frantic. He's talking about Alan Bokhari, of all people, again, saying, Lauren, this is terrible. Alan has joined the left. He is working for Antifa. He is trying to leak all of my documents. He is trying to ruin my life. He's trying to take down the right wing. Don't you remember how horrible he was to you last year? This man is insane, and he is going to ruin my life. I've got contacts with Azalea Banks. I've got all of these celebrities. He's got their phone numbers. He's got their messages. He's going to leak them all to the far left media. He is trying to take down the conservative movement, and I need your help. I know he said horrible things to you or your cameraman. Any blackmail you have will help me right now. It will help me stop this far left attack on me that will destroy my life. And of course, I hadn't really spoken to Alan in a while. I had no reason to disbelieve Milo. He hadn't provided any proof for this, but he was Milo Yiannopoulos. He was the head of the conservative movement. Of course, what he's gonna do and what, his word is God's will at this point if you're a young conservative watching politics, right? It's Milo. So I just say, of course, Milo. Like, of course I'll help you out. That's crazy. I have no idea why Alan would do that, but let me see if I can find something. And that was that. I didn't hear from Milo for ages afterwards. And at the time, I didn't know what came of all that. I remember so clearly that one call from Milo saying, I need blackmail right now, Lauren. This guy is a far left spy. I need help, and I need you to show your allegiance, basically, to me and the conservative movement. Now, I'm gonna have to bring you forward a little bit from here, because it wasn't until years later that I discovered everything Milo said on that call to me about Alan Bokhari was completely false. Completely false, just made up out of thin air. Why, you may ask? Well, and some of this is publicly available information now due to lawsuits, but Alan Bokhari had written just about everything that made Milo famous. He wrote his book Dangerous, the most popular one, which he was owed a whole lot of money for in royalties. He wrote his speeches. He wrote his articles for Breitbart. He wrote his talking points for shows he went on. Alan Bokhari is a freaking genius. Actually an extremely talented guy, but none of that was appreciated apparently, because as soon as Alan wanted to get paid for all the work he did, Milo decided it would be easier to blackmail him. That's right. Milo did not want to pay Alan royalties for the book he wrote, and he figured it would be easier to call up people like me, call up friends and coworkers, and ask them all for any blackmail he could get on Alan Bokhari, so he could go to him and say, listen, I'm not going to pay you royalties, and you're not going to say a word about it or go to court, or I'm going to destroy your life with blackmail. What kind of a way is that to operate? I feel it's crazy, because looking at this, it's like, what the fuck? Who does that to people? And somehow this is still more sane than half the shit we're gonna get to in this video. But I had this moment in my life when I started to see this stuff
Absolute
happen
Chad
over and over
moment from
again
Milo.
around me, of thinking, is this normal? Is this how normal people behave? Is this just what adults do? Is this what happens with regular celebrities in law offices? And what world have I entered that people behave in this manner towards one another? And it somehow all gets worse. It somehow all gets worse, because truly this sort of behavior, I hate to say it, because I put so much of my life and time and belief and my heart into conservative politics, but so much of this was the norm. Just the norm. The norm, day to day, what people just did to each other all the time in this sphere. And if you weren't the one that was blackmailing other people, if you weren't the one that was ruining other people's lives to save your own ass, then you were the one getting your life ruined, for the most part. It was one or the other. And, Just while I'm on the topic of sociopathic behavior in politics and support staff getting their lives ruined to save face for, you know, the big famous people at the front that'll razzle and dazzle the audience, let's talk about the white privilege grant. Some of you may remember this. 2017, man, the years have all meshed together, but Milo Yiannopoulos started a grant called the White Privilege Grant to help poor young men, white men. Obviously, there are a million grants for black men, there are a million grants for women, Latina, mothers, whatever it be, but there are a whole heck of a lot of poor, rural, white people in America that have no grants for them. So it was a really cool opportunity for conservatives to give and help some people that have kind of been left behind and forgotten in society.